Amagyanantimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadama Yam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So today we are continuing reading from Bhagavad-gīta as it is. From His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, founder-ācārya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are continuing with chapter 3, which is entitled Karma Yoga, and it's dealing about working with knowledge and detachment for the pleasure of the Lord, and this is better than false renunciation. So Arjuna in the beginning was asking whether he should renounce action or do the work. So Krishna is answering that he should not renounce activities, because when one is not purified, like it's not the case of Arjuna, but Arjuna is asking on our behalf, so then he should not renounce the work artificially or prematurely, but engaged in the work as he started to speak in the Shloka 9, and the work as a sacrifice for the pleasure of the Lord. And we are now in the section Shlokas 10 to 16, when Krishna is giving more details about the sacrifice. And last time we mentioned also that by performing sacrifices, how is the chain, how is that sacrifices go to Vishnu. Vishnu is providing some results to demigods. Demigods are satisfied, and in return they are giving us what we need. And again, as a great gratitude, we are again performing sacrifices, and this goes on like this. But for the present age, the recommended sacrifice for Kali Yuga is sankirtana-yajna, means congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And also we mentioned something that we inevitably, whatever we do, we are committing sins. So we are always killing some tiny little entities. So in this way, it is recommended to do the sacrifice also to rectify these sinful reactions. Okay, so let's move for Shloka 13. Yajña shishta shinaksanto muchyante sarva kilbishaihi bunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyat makaranat. Yajña shishta, of food taken after performance of yajña. Ashinaha, eaters. Santaha, the devotees. Muchyante, get relief. Sarva, all kinds of. Kilbishaihi, from sins. Bunjate, enjoy. Te, they, too, but. Agham, grievous sins. Papaha, sinners. Ye, who. Pachanti, prepare food. Atmakaranat, for sense enjoyment. Translation: the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment really eat only sin. Purport: the devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas, and they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santak sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yajñas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And these performances of yajñas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of sankirtana-yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. So this is standard process what devotees do, whatever they have. They either they are on that level, they are doing something, some foodstuffs, preparing for Lord's pleasure, or if they are not on such high level, at least what they are desiring to eat, they offer first to the Lord. So in this way, they do this sacrifice, and then they partake on the remnants of the foodstuffs which Lord tasted, and then they eat also themselves or honor Lord's prasādam. So in this way, they are protected from sinful association or contamination of the material world. But this is not only sacrifice devotees are performing, because here are mentioned also different activities within devotional service, meaning Shravanam, Kirtanam, like hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, doing the deity worship, and like this. So there are various other forms of sacrifice within Krishna consciousness. And very important is sankirtana-yajna, when we are chanting together the Lord's holy name in kirtan. But sankirtan doesn't mean necessarily only kirtan. It can mean also when devotees are cooperating together in some services also. This verse is mentioned also in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.5.49. So we read little paragraph here. In Bhagavad-gītā 3.13, it is confirmed that one who takes foodstuff after a performance of sacrifice eats real food for proper maintenance of the body and soul. But one who cooks for himself and does not perform any sacrifice eats only lumps of sin in the shape of foodstuffs. Such sinful eating can never make one happy or free from scarcity. Famine is not due to an increase in population, as less intelligent economists think. When human society is grateful to the Lord for all his gifts for the maintenance of the living entities, then there is certainly no scarcity or want in society. But when men are unaware of the intrinsic value of such gifts from the Lord, surely they are in want. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being due to his past virtuous acts, but if one forgets his relationship with the Lord, certainly he must evade the stage of starvation by the law of the powerful material nature. One cannot escape the vigilance of the powerful material nature unless he leads a God-conscious or devotional life. So here a very important element is mentioned, that people may think, or after some time, they started to think that they don't need God anymore. And still they had some pious credit from the past. So they thought, okay, we are not doing now any worship of God, but still we are having a lot of opulence and varieties of foodstuffs and some facilities and whatever. But after some time, the next generation had less of that, had less qualities also, like, I mean, character, and everything was decreased. And the reason is, of course, that they stopped worshipping the Lord. So this pious credit, at some point, it will run out. And if we do not do these sacrifices, so gradually we are losing also the results of these sacrifices. So that's also important. It's not like main goal, but this is what is happening in society. That why the society is degrading gradually in this way, because they are forgetting this important element. And Prabhupada also mentions here that even in other places it was mentioning that the planet Earth can easily feed 10 times more people, that there is no scarcity of foodstuff. Nature can provide, so it's not any reason to decrease the population or things like that. So nature is not bothered by much population. We can also hear in the ancient times in these cities like Hastinapur and this where all these dynasties were living in Bharat. So they have millions and millions of people there living, and everybody was like provided for. Even personal guards, I think, of Maharaja Ugrasena were counting like hundreds of millions, and just these were personal guards. So what to speak of rest of the army. So definitely nature can provide for much more people than we have now. But for us, it's something unimaginable because we don't have this experience anymore. But what we don't have experience doesn't mean that it's not possible. Okay, let's move on. 3:14. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anna sambhavaha yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagyak karma samudbhavaha. Annad from grains, bhavati grow, bhutani the material bodies, parjanyat from rains, anna of food grains, sambhavaha production, yagyat from the performance of sacrifice, bhavati becomes possible, parjanyaha rain, yajña performance of yajña, karma prescribed duties, samudbhavaha born of. Translation: all living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajña, sacrifice, and yajña is born of prescribed duties. Purport: Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushana, a great commentator on the Bhagavad-gītā, writes as follows: Ye indriyādyana angat tava stitam yagyam sarveshvaram vishnum abhyarjya tatchesam ashnanti tena taddeha yatram sampadayanti te santak sarveshvarasya yagya purushasya bhaktāh sarvakilbishair anadikala vivridhair atmanudbhava pratibandhakair nikhilaih papar vimuchyante. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yajna Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods, so they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection, and one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hawks and dogs, to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contamination, and one who is immunized by accepting prasādam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. So, yes, one thing is when we worship Lord Krishna, all the demigods are automatically worshipped because Krishna is source of all the demigods. So he doesn't have to worship all the demigods separately each other, but just by worshipping Lord Krishna, all the demigods will be also satisfied. And in this way, they will provide what we need, like air, light, and water, so we can produce the food grains. And then when we have these food grains, devotees of the Lord are offering food to Krishna, and then they eat these remnants from him. And this is, like Prabhupada is mentioning, like our spiritual vaccine. So he's protecting us from material contamination. So those who are regularly accepting prasadam of the Lord, they can be protected from material contamination. Okay, there's some comment. Myself, I got this experience in sankirtana-yajna because I was depressed when I was studying in university due to unsuccessful attempt in seminar. I was so depressed, but by involving in sankirtan, my consciousness completely changed. I was feeling immersed in joy very soon. Yes, this is a nice example how Holy Name works, that he switches us off of material miseries. We are after some time, when we are engaged basically in any service, but chanting the Holy Name is very powerful. We are kind of indifferent to these material successes or unsuccesses, and we are just immersed in chanting. Yes, very nice. Okay, food grains or vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eats different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, etc., and the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices, therefore one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajña, specifically the sankirtana-yajna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. So, yes, we see that everything what we eat, whether one is vegetarian or non-vegetarian, everything ultimately comes from nature, and this is maintained by rains which are coming from demigods, or I mean by also from sun and moon, because moon is nourishing the vegetables. By moonlight, vegetables are getting the juice, the taste. So in this way, we are getting this and this produce from the nature. And it's expected from us also that we offer them back as a sacrifice, or perform some sacrifice as a gratitude, at least to have this food supply. But of course, there is a higher meaning for, especially for sankirtana-yajna, so we can ultimately go to the spiritual world or be engaged in the devotional service. And that's also, as I mentioned some time ago, that Prabhupada said that because of the impiety of people at the time, normally it would not be even possible that we would have flowers. But because devotees were doing this sankirtana-yajna and were offering flowers to the Lord, so that's why material nature was still providing these flowers. Otherwise, the situation would be so degraded that we would be devoid of flowers entirely on this planet. So we can see how devotees are basically maintaining the facilities we are getting, also others which are getting. And we can also see where there is a lot of impiety. There are also a lot of miseries, like some natural disasters or even famine or some pests or various things which are then disturbing this population in particular areas which is impious. Okay, Shloka 15. Karma brahmo bhavam vidhi brahma kshara samudbhavam tasmad sarvagatam brahma nityam yagye pratishtitam. Karma work Brahma from the Vedas. Udbhavam produced Vidhi. You should know Brahma, the Vedas. Akshara from the Supreme Brahman, personality of Godhead. Samudbhavam directly manifested. Tasma, therefore. Sarvagatam, all-pervading. Brahma, transcendence. Nityam, eternally. Yagye, in sacrifice. Pratishtitam, situated. Translation: regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Purport: Yagyartha karma, or the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more explicitly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of the Yagya Purusha, Vishnu, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahman or the transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. Anything performed without the direction of the Vedas is called vikarma, or unauthorized or sinful work. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, one similarly has to work under direction of the supreme state of the Lord. Such directions in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nishvasitam Etat Yakarigvedo Yajurvedaha Samavedo Tarvangirasaha. The four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the Great Personality of Godhead. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 4:5-11. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak by breathing air. For, as it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord has the omnipotence to perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus fathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his directions in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home back to Godhead. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment, but the Vedic directions are so meant that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead having finished his so-called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned souls to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of yajña by becoming Krishna conscious. Even those who have not followed the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performance of Vedic yajñas or karmas. So, as the Lord is explaining in this section how to perform sacrifice, so he's saying here that we should take direction from the Vedas as is coming to the details of sacrifice, how to do it particularly. So for this purpose, Vedas were emanated from the Lord's breathing, and we should utilize the Vedas. Otherwise, it is mentioned if we are not following Vedas, we are following or we are doing vikarma or unauthorized or sinful work. But Prabhupada is mentioning here also that if we take to Krishna consciousness, that is also kind of replacing or fulfilling the purpose which is in the Vedas, because ultimately Vedas are meant to come to Krishna consciousness, or by performance or following the Vedas, we should become Krishna conscious. So this is substitute also for performing Vedic yajñas if we are engaging in Krishna conscious activities. Question: do artificial intelligence can understand Vedas? Good question. Vedas are written in such cryptid way that I think that artificial intelligence doesn't have any chance, because there are a lot of metaphors and second meanings and this like this. On top of that, definitely artificial intelligence cannot understand spiritual things like spiritual emotions and these things. So maybe technically, logically, something can be derived, but I don't think it can conceive the whole purpose of the Vedas. Because even for people, unless they have some guidance from the spiritual master who will decode for them, because Vedas are not delivered only by studying the scripture, they are delivered by hearing from Guru. And Guru is revealing to us, and also this understanding is being revealed in the heart. So unless artificial intelligence has this heart, it cannot understand the spiritual topics. This is my understanding. So we cannot just approach Vedas just because many scholars are trying to do it. We can see the example. Academics are approaching the Vedas and trying to make some conclusions, but their conclusions are totally out of sense. So, yeah, yes, only soul can understand connection with Krishna. Yes. That's important. This connection is not material. This is spiritual connection. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so next one. 316. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati hayaha aghayur indriyaramo mogham partha sajivati. Evam dus pravartitam, established by the Vedas, chakram cycle does not anuvartayati, adopt iha in this life, yaha one who aghayuhu, whose life is full of sins. Indriya aramaha, satisfied in sense gratification. Mogham, uselessly. Partha, or son of Pritha, Arjuna. Saha, he, jivati, lives. Translation, my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Purport: the Maimonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above-mentioned cycle of performing yajñas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajñas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. But those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of yajña performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajña system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reactions of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajñas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajñas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajñas, one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so one who is just living for sense gratification ultimately ends up in quite tricky situation, because first thing, he may run out of his piety, if he has some, And second thing, he will definitely not progress toward spiritual goals. So that's why it's recommended to perform these yajñas, as was mentioned before, even for one's maintenance, but also for these higher goals to attain a spiritual road. And one who is, as Prabhupada mentions, in sensory consciousness, means he is desiring some sense gratification. Therefore, he needs to purify his senses by performing these yajñas, and in this way he can move forward. And those who are above these pious or impious activities, who are transcendental, so for them it's not required to perform these Vedic performances or Vedic yajñas. They can directly be engaged in Krishna consciousness. But also in Krishna consciousness we have various samskaras and these things which are given to us by 6 Goswamis of Vrindavana, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disciples. So there is something also, but it's not so complex or elaborate like the Vedic sacrifices. Vedic sacrifices are much more complex than these Vaishnava sacrifices. But still there are some also, because there might be householders who have families and they also need to perform such sacrifices for the well-being of their children and like that. Yes, and one important thing at the end mentioned that the ultimate purpose of all these yajñas is to become purified and to become Krishna conscious. So if one doesn't achieve this goal of Krishna consciousness, then this yajñas doesn't fulfill the purpose they are meant for. Because even in these yajñas, they are designed in such a way that some brahmana is coming who is performing these yajñas, and if this brahmana is also a Vaishnava, so there is a chance that he will also speak something about Krishna consciousness to the person who invited him to perform these yajñas. So in this way, those people can have association of devotees, and by this association they can progress in Krishna consciousness. So that's why it's also important to invite sadhus for householders and take their association so they can be elevated spiritually. And Vedic system is basically designed in this way that we also read in, let's say, in Mahabharata or other scriptures that those great kings were performing various sacrifices, and all those rishis from all the universe were coming to those sacrifices, and in this way they could have this association of devotees. So this is basically the purpose of all these yajñas which are mentioned in the Vedas. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gītā ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki jai.